All praise to the Most High. We're going to go ahead and get started. We're going to speak about the origins of the cross. A lot of people have questions concerning the cross, no different than the whole term, so be it, as an amen, and how we went through that, just how stuff comes from Egypt. You know, things come from captivity, and they were adopted in, like Israel just took it on when they learned it in captivity. So as we go through this, the Most High shows us more excellent ways. So he just gives us some clarity on some things, not for us to sit around and point the finger or wag our tongue at no one, but it's just for us to have a better understanding so that we can come closer to our Creator. All praise to the Most High. So today's message is going to be on the origin of the cross. Exodus chapter 20, verse 4 through 6. It says, "Thou shalt not make unto thee any graven image or any likeness of anything that is in the Shamayins or heavens above, or that is in the Arets or earth beneath, or that is in the water or under the Arets. Thou shalt not bow down thyself to them, nor serve them. For I, Yahuwah, Elohim, am a jealous Elohim, visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children unto the third and fourth generation of them that hate me, and showing mercy unto thousands of them that love me and keep my commandments." So right here, I want to take a pause. When it says in verse 4, "Thou shalt not make any graven images or any likeness of anything that is in the Shamayim or in the earth or rest beneath," let's deal with that for a moment. Verse 5 says, "Thou shalt not bow down thyself to them, nor serve them." Here's the question. There's a song that I knew when we was in fellowship a long time ago, going to different fellowships. It was "At the Cross." And in the song it says, "At the cross you beckon me. Draw me gently to my knees and I will worship." But it was all about, bowing down at the cross and worshiping. So the reality of it is it threw some flags up later on when I started studying. I wanted to know, so what is this point about the cross? And just like Brother Steve had brought up earlier, like it says that he was crucified on a tree, but then some places it says cross. So that's something that we wanted to open up and we wanted to get into studying. And I encourage you to go study more, to seek the matter out more, but this is what the comprised of my studies have come to. He says, "Thou shalt not bow down thyself to them, nor serve them." An ANKH. We talked about it earlier in our study 2 weeks ago. The ANKH, also known as the CRUX of Anastada, is a Latin for the cross with a handle. It's an ancient Egyptian hieroglyphic ideograph to symbolize life. So the ANKH is something that a lot of their so-called powers would hold on to, and we're going to see pictures of this. It says the Egyptian gods or powers are often portrayed carrying it by its loops or bearing one in each hand or arm crossed over their chest. The ANKH appears in the hand of a proximity of almost every deity in the Egyptian pantheon, so including the pharaohs. So let's deal with this for a moment. Here you can see pictures of just some hieroglyphic. There's a lot more, but we see even here that they all have one in their hands. So it's not a new symbol. It's something that's been around for a long time. And even if you take mention of their hats up there, you'll see a lot of times when you look in, Catholic synagogues, you'll see that they have the sun around their heads. And then also you can see like how we got the Pope's hat on their heads. So we're dealing with that. We're dealing with the same thing, that this stuff isn't new. There's nothing new under the sun. The CRUX. The CRUX is a pole, a stake, or a cross. The cross is prominent in pagan culture and religions. It originally was a symbol for the god of Tammuz, the Taw cross, of ancient Babylon. This was the worship of Nimrod, who was reborn. As Tammuz, when the mother and wife became pregnant after the rays of the sun got on her, it was an untimely death. He was destroyed and killed. It says it also is prominent in the Egyptian Ankh, which is depicted for the symbol of life, picturing the female genital organs or the womb. So now I'm going to show you how they took the CRUX or the Ankh and they make it almost like something having to do with the fertility. So here we got the Kemetic womb of the mankind. So the Ankh actually speaks about the uterus, and that's the top part. It says the womb of life. So then that's in there is the life. And then on the left side and the right side, you have the sunset and the sunrise. And then coming down, it has the fallopian tubes into the vaginal canal, which is portraying life. And then if you look at a woman and how she's laid out, it takes on a type of same form. So once again, this is what the Most High created. This is creation. But once again, mankind worships the creation rather than the creator. So we've got to stay with the creator and not with the creation. Let's do it. Numbers 21, 8 through 9. Numbers 21, it says in verse 8, and Yahuwah said unto Moshe, make thee a fiery serpent and set it up on a pole, and it shall come to pass that everyone that is bitten, when he look upon it, shall live. Verse 9, and Moshe made a serpent of brass and put it on a pole. And it came to pass that if a serpent had bitten any man, when he beheld the serpent of brass, he lived. Well, once again, we don't worship Asclepius. So this is a Greco-Roman power. This is a Greco-God and Roman power. This is where a lot of times you'll see on the back of an ambulance, you'll see the staff and you'll see the serpent on it. And it has to do with power and healing and truth. But we don't worship that. But once again, we see how people have taken things and they've started worshiping things rather than the creator. Acts 5 and 30. And Elohim of our fathers raised up Yahusha, whom you slew and hanged on a tree. Now we're dealing with the fact of him being hung on a tree. Don't say cross here. It clearly says on a tree. So I'm going to show you that this isn't something new, because in Torah, this is something that actually happened. And if you go back and think about when he was crucified, they actually wanted to take him down before nightfall. They did not want him to stay up on that tree, so they took him down before nightfall. And we're going to see how this is a practice. This is nothing new. Deuteronomy 21, 22, and 23. And if a man have committed a sin worthy of death, and he be put to death, and thou hang him on a tree, his body shall not remain all night upon the tree, but thou shalt in any wise bury him that day. For he that is hanged is accursed of Elohim, that thy land be not defiled, which Yahuwah thy power give thee for an inheritance. So we clearly see, according to Torah, that if someone was hanged upon a tree, that they would have to come down before nightfall. They could not stay up there. They had to take them down. If they did not take them down, then they would defile the land. Joshua 8, verse 29. And the king of Ai, he hanged on a what? Tree until eventide. And as soon as the sun was down, Joshua commanded that they should take his carcass down from the tree and cast it into the entering of the gate of the city, and they raised there upon him a great heap of stones that remaineth unto this day. Once again, according to Israel, they would never leave a body up on a tree past nightfall. When eventide would come, they would take down the body. Joshua 10, 26 through 27. And afterward, Joshua smote them and slew them and hanged them on what? 5 trees. And they were hanging up on the trees until what? Evening. There's nothing new under the sun. It says, and it came to pass at the time of the going down of the sun that Joshua commanded that they took them down off the trees and cast them into the cave wherein they had been hid, and laid great stones in the cave's mouth, which remaineth until this very day. Once again, they hanged them on trees, but they got them down at evening time. They got them down before the sunset. They made sure that there was not a body on the tree past sunset unless the land would be defiled. Galatians 3:13. Now, dealing with the fact that it says, Mashiach has redeemed us from the curse of the law, being made a curse for us, for it is written, cursed is everyone that hangeth from a tree. Cursed is everyone that hangeth from a tree. He's given us the blessings and the cursings. He said that if we are obedient, the blessings will fall. If we were cursing, then the cursings will fall on our head. One of the curses is that you would hang from a tree. But he says, I became a curse for your curses. 2 Samuel chapter 4, verse 12. And David commanded his young men, and they slew them and cut off their hands and their feet, and they hanged them up over the pool in Hebron. But they took the head of Ishbosheth and buried it in a sepulchre in Abner in Hebron. So we're dealing with the fact, once again, they hung them over the pool. How do you think they hung them over the pool? On a tree. 2 Samuel 21:8-9. But the king took the two sons of Rizpah and the daughter of Aiah, whom she bare unto Saul, Armani and Methabist, and the 5 sons of Michael and the daughter of Saul, who she brought for Adriel, the son of Barzillai and Methelite. And he delivered them into the hands of the Gibeonites, and they hanged them in the hill before Yahuwah. And they fell all 7 together, and they were put to death in the days of the harvest, and the first days in the beginning of the barley harvest. Once again, how do you think that they hanged them in the hill? On a tree. They hung them on the tree. Nothing new under the sun. So now what I want to do is I want to get into Ezekiel chapter 8, because we just dealt with the fact of Tammuz. We dealt with how people begin to worship the created things rather than the creator. We've dealt with how Greco-Roman has turned, the scepter and the serpent, where the Most High told Moshe to basically stick up a pole and put a fiery serpent upon them, and anyone that looked on them would be healed. We're dealing with the fact that they turned that into a form of worship. Once again, we take everything that the Most High gives and we make it into a form of worship. That's why John 4:24 says, Elohim is Ruach, and they that worship him must worship him in Ruach in truth. We got to make sure that our worship is in truth. We can't just be worshiping because that's how everybody worships. Ezekiel chapter 8. I want to go ahead and read this. Ezekiel chapter 8. In Ezekiel chapter 8, this is how it reads. And it came to pass in the 6th year, in the 6th month, on the 5th day of the month, as I sat in my house, and the elders of Yehudah sat before me, that the hand of Yahuwah Elohim fell there upon me. Then I beheld, and lo, a likeness, as the appearance of fire from the appearance of his loins, even downward fire, and from his loins even upward, as the appearance of brightness, the color of amber. And he put forth the form of a hand and took me by a lock of my head, and the Ruach lifted me up between the Arets and the Shamayim, and brought me in a vision of Elohim to Jerusalem, to the door of the inner gate that looketh toward the north, where was the seat of the image of jealousy, which provoketh to jealousy. And behold, the glory of Elohim of Israel was there according to the vision, and I saw in the plain Then said he unto me, Son of man, lift up thine eyes now way toward the north. So I lifted up my eyes in the way toward the north, and behold, northward at the gate of the altar, the image in the entry was jealousy. He said furthermore unto me, Son of man, seest thou what they do, even the great abominations that the house of Israel committeth here, that I should go far off from my sanctuary, but turn thee yet again, and thou shalt see greater abominations. And he brought me to the door of the court, and when I looked, behold, a hole in the wall. Then said he unto me, Son of man, dig now in the wall. And when I had digged in the wall, behold, the door. And he said unto me, Go in and behold the wicked abominations that they do there. So I went and I saw, behold, every form of creepy thing and abominable beast, and all idols of the house of Israel portrayed upon the walls round about. And there stood before them 70 men of ancient of the house of Israel. In the midst stood Jehohanan, the son of Shaphan, with every man his censer in his hand, and a thick cloud of incense went up. Then said unto me, Son of man, hast thou seen what the ancients of the house of Israel do in the dark, every man in the chambers of his imagery? For they say, Yahuwah seeth us, Yahuwah hath forsaken the arrests. They say, Yahuwah seeth us not, Yahuwah has forsaken the arrests. He said also to me, Turn thee yet again, and thou shalt see greater abominations that they do. Then he brought me into the door of the gate of Yahuwah's house, which was toward the north, and toward there sat women weeping for Tammuz. This is the first place in the entirety of the script that you'll read anything about Tammuz. It says, Then said he unto me, Hast thou seen this, O son of man? Turn thee yet again, and thou shalt see greater abominations than these. And he brought me into the inner court of Yahuwah's house. And behold, at the door of the temple of Yahuwah, between the porch and the altar, were about 25 men, 25 men, with their backs toward the temple of Yahuwah and their faces toward the east. And they worshiped the sun toward the east. Let's stop right there. He said, greater abomination than these. So the greatest abomination of all abominations is to turn your back from the temple of Yahuwah and to worship the sun. I'm going to say it again. The greatest abomination in this statement is to turn your back to the temple of Yahuwah and to worship the sun. He said they worship the sun toward the east. Verse 17, then said unto me, Hast thou seen this, O son of man? Is this a light thing to the house of Yehudah, that they commit the abominations which they commit here? For they have filled the land with violence, and they have returned to provoke me to anger, and lo, they put the branch to their nose. Therefore I will also deal in fury. My eyes shall spare, neither have pity, and now they cry in my ears with a loud voice, yet I will not hear them. Though they cry in my ears with a loud voice, he said, I will not hear them. What I want to deal with is this situation in Ezekiel 8 for a moment. Ezekiel 8:1, it says that they came to pass in the 6th year, in the 6th month, on the 5th day. It's funny, the next day will be 666, but I don't want to deal with that for a moment. It says, I sat in my house, the elders of Yehudah sat before me, and the hand of Yahuwah Elohim fell upon me there. So on the 6th year, on the 6th month, on the 5th day, he's given warning to the Nabi. And on the 6th day, 666, judgment comes. Follow with me for a moment. Ezekiel 8, 10, 11. So I went and I saw, behold, every form of what? Creepy thing. Let's deal with this. He went in and he seen what? Every form of creepy thing and abominable beast and all the idols of the house of Israel. Once again, creepy things, abominable beasts, and all the idols. Let's deal with this for a moment. Portrayed upon the wall round about. There stood before the 70 men of ancient of the house of Israel, in the midst stood Yeniza and the Shaphan, and every man with the censer in his hand, a thick cloud of incense went up. Let's deal with that because we got some numerology in here. We got the 70 men. Moshe was told to gather him 70 men, and the same ruach that was up on him would be placed upon them. So these 70 men had a purpose. I want to deal with this for a moment. The creepy things. Let's deal with Romans 1 and 7. To all that be in Rome. Isn't it funny that we're dealing with Rome again? This is where all this stuff comes from, is Rome. It's funny that the message is to all that be in Rome, beloved of Elohim, called the Kodeshim, grace to you and peace from Elohim our Father and Adonai Yahusha Mashiach. For the wrath of Elohim is revealed from the Shamayim against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men who hold the truth in unrighteousness. Those 70 elders had the truth, but they held it in unrighteousness. Because, watch this, because that which is known of Elohim is manifested in them, for Elohim showed it unto them. He put it in them. Then he says, for the invisible things of him from the creation of the world are clearly seen. The what? Invisible things. He's not made to be an image to worship. He's a ruach, and we are to worship him in ruach in truth. It says to be understood by the things that are made, even his eternal power and divinity, so that they are without excuse. Verse 21, because that when they knew Yahuwah, they glorified him not as Yahuwah, neither were they thankful, but became vain in their imaginations, and their foolish hearts were darkened. Watch this. Professing themselves to be wise, they became what? Fools. Watch this. And they changed the glory of the uncorruptible Elohim into an image made like the corruption man, birds, four-footed, and what? Creepy things. What was in the temple when he went in there? In the hole. All those creepy things. All of those four-footed beasts. All of those idols that they set up to worship. Verse 14. It says, then he brought me to the door of the gate of Yahuwah's house, which was toward the north. And behold, there sat women weeping for Tammuz. They were weeping for Tammuz. Ezekiel 8:15. Then said unto me, hast thou seen this, O son of man? Turn thee yet again, and thou shalt see what? Greater abomination than these. Ezekiel 8:16 and 17. And he brought me into the inner court of Yahuwah's house, and behold, at the door of the temple of Yahuwah, between the porch and the altar. I want you to hold that for a moment. The porch and the altar. It says, we're about 5 and 20 men, which is 25, with their backs toward the temple of Yahuwah, and their faces toward the east, and they worship the sun toward the east. Then he said unto me, hast thou seen this, son of man? Is this a light thing in the house of Yehuda, that they commit these abominations which they commit here? For they have filled the land with violence, and have returned to provoke me to anger, and lo, the branch to their nose. I need to deal with this for a moment. The ones that worship the sun filled the land with violence. I need you to understand, we're going to be dealing with the Templars in a minute, and we're going to be dealing with Constantine in a minute. And I need you to understand, the land was filled with violence when they came in with their free will worship that they wanted to put on man. So he says, between the porch and the altar, there was men with their backs toward the temple. Listen. Between the porch and the altar, men had their backs to the temple. Between the porch and the altar, Joel 2:17. Let the priest minister of Yahuwah weeping between the what? Porch and the altar. And let them say, spare thy people, O Yahuwah, and give not thy heritage to reproach, that the heathen should rule over them. Wherein should they say among the people, where is their Elohim? Because their backs were to the temple, in the midst of the porch and the altar, and they weren't trying to cry out to the Most High to what? Spare the people, that a heathen should not rule over them. Because of this, we have now got caught up in this type of worship that we're in today, which is sun worship. Ezekiel saw the crowning insult to Yahuwah. Listen. Ezekiel seen the crowning insult to Yahuwah. 25 men meet in a hallowed place to worship the sun. In order for them to worship the sun, they had to turn their backs upon the temple to face the east. that which is intended to be the best to manifest the glory of Elohim in creation, is perverted to take away from the glory of Elohim. And turning away from the temple, it was an attitude of defiance toward Elohim. The 25 men represented in the 24 Levitical priest courses of the high priest at their head. So what I'm saying is these 25 men, this had to deal with the 24 priests, because there is a specific course that was set up. They were like specific orders for them to stand in, and then the high priest at the head, which makes 25. So we're going to go ahead and go to 1 Chronicles. I'm not going to read all of it, but I'm going to go to 1 Chronicles chapter 24, and I want to go to verse 18. 1 Chronicles 24:18. I'm just going to get straight to it, so I ain't taking too much of your time. But verse 18 says, the 3 and 20th, which is the 23rd to Deliah, and the 24th to Messiah. These, verse 19 says, these were the orderings of them in their service to come into the house of Yahuwah according to the manner under Aaron, their father, Yahuwah Elohim of Israel has commanded him. This was the course that was set up. There was 24 priests set up for a position. There was 24 positions for them to come in, having to do with the 25 representing, plus Aaron, which would have been the 25th, which would be 25 altogether. The cup of iniquity has been filled to the brim. The 24 Levitical priest courses with the high priest at their head is 25. 2 Chronicles 29:6-8. Let's deal with this. For our fathers have trespassed and done that which was evil in the eyes of Yahuwah Elohim. They have what? Forsaken him. What did they do? They have turned away their faces from the habitation or the temple of Yahuwah, and they did what? Turned their backs. Also, they have shut the doors of the porch and put out the lamps. Let's deal with that. The door of the porch means them going back forth saying mercy. They wanted to spare the people. Putting out the lamps, which goes back to, we was even talking about this when we was in Alabama. We were dealing with the fact of Sister Courtney was bringing up about the 10 virgins, the wise and the foolish, and we're dealing with the lamps. Well, listen, the ones that have turned their backs from the Most High, gave the temple their backs to worship the sun, they're putting out the lamps. So you don't have to worry about being a virgin that's going to have oil in your lamps, because when you go to the marketplace to get oil, you're going to find out they don't got oil. And that marketplace is talking about these churches. The only way you're going to get your oil is to spend time with the Most High. If you don't spend time with them, you won't have your lamp filled. It says they have shut up the doors of the porch and put out the lamps, and have not burned incense nor offered burnt offerings in the holy place unto Elohim of Israel. Therefore the wrath of Yahuwah was upon Yehudah and Jerusalem, and he has delivered them to trouble, to astonishment, to hissing, as ye see with your eyes. It happened because the leaders had turned their backs. The concord, the priestly concord, the ones that are priests, they quit doing what they were supposed to do. They were no longer telling the people between the clean and the unclean. They were not telling the people between defiled. They were not telling the people the difference, because they turned their backs and began to worship other things. Now we're going to go into Ezekiel 9. Let's go to Ezekiel 9. Ezekiel chapter 9. Let's read this real quick. After we went through Ezekiel 8 and we seen what was happening, we seen how deep inside they were worshiping other powers. They weren't seeking the Most High. They did not have a single heart. They had a divided heart. And because of this, they led the people astray. So Ezekiel 9, we're going to deal with it. He cried also in my ears with a loud voice, saying, cause them to have charge over the city to draw near. Charge them that what? Have charge over the city to draw near. Every man with his destroying weapon in his hand. What I need you to understand is when he came down with the commands of the Most High, he said, who is with me? The reason why the priesthood became the Levites is because Aaron stood up and said, we will. And they said, take out your swords and slay them. And they said about 3,000 were slain. I need you to understand the ones that are the priests are the ones that have charge over the city. It says, and every man with his destroying weapon in his hand. And behold, 6 men came from the way of the higher gate, which lie toward the north. Remember in Ezekiel 8, he told me to focus on the north. He says, every man a slaughter weapon in his hand, and one man among them was clothed with linen, with a writer's inkhorn by his side, and he went and stood beside the brazen altar. And the glory of Elohim of Israel was upon the cherub, there whereupon he was the threshold of the house, and he called to the man clothed with the white linen, which had the writer's inkhorn by his side. And Yahuwah said unto him, go through the midst of the city, through the midst of Jerusalem, and set a mark upon the forehead of the men that sigh and cry for the abominations that they have done in the midst thereof. And to the others he said, in my hearing, go ye after him through the city and smite. Let not your eyes spare, neither have pity. Slay utterly the old, the young, both maids, little children, women, but come not near any man whom is the mark, and begin at the sanctuary. And they begin in the ancient men, with the ancient men. Remember what was going on with the ancient men? 25 of the ancient men, y'all. It said the ancient men which were before the house. And he said unto them, defile the house and fill the courts with the slain, yet go forth. And they went forth and slew the city. And it came to pass while they were slaying them, I was left, that I fell upon my face and cried and said, Ah, Yahuwah Elohim, wilt thou destroy all the residue of Israel in the pouring out of the fury of Jerusalem? Then he said unto me, the iniquity of the house of Israel and Yehuda is exceeding great, and the land is full of blood, and the city is full of perverseness. For they say, Yahuwah has forsaken the Eretz, and Yahuwah has seen not. As for me also, my ear shall not spare, neither will have pity, but I will recompense their way upon their head. And behold, a man clothed with the linen, which had the inkhorn by his side, reported the matter, saying, I have done as thou hast commanded me. The next day is the day of judgment. 666. The 6th year, the 6th month, on the 6th day. I want to deal with this for a moment. The cross became justified as a figure of worship based off verse 4. Watch this. And Yahuwah said unto him, go through the midst of the city, through the midst of Jerusalem, and set a tah upon the foreheads of the men that sigh and cry for all the abominations done in the midst thereof. They say, well, brother, tah means mark. It means desire. It means a sign of exemption from judgment. It doesn't mean he literally put a tah on their heads. That's why a lot of folk be on this tah. The tah cross is the cross without the top. It looks like a T. It's an implication or a signature. It's a desire. It's a mark. So when we go into the Strongs, we see in Ezekiel 9:4, it shows the sign of the cross branded on the thigh of the neck of the horse, the camels, whence the name letter that shows you the tah, which is a Phoenician coin in the Maccabees, the form of a cross. From the Phoenicians and the Greeks and the Romans took both the name and from the letter. So what I want to do is stop here for a moment. The Maccabees, we need to remember that the Maccabees were under attack. A lot of the so-called children of Israel decided to take on the ways of the Gentiles. So we cannot be stuck on the fact of believing, oh, well, the Maccabees had it, so it's right. Because a lot of them said, why don't we join them? And we worship like they worship. And they stopped circumcising themselves. If anybody read into the Apocrypha, they'll see that. So yes, in a Maccabean time, this was the form of their cross, but we're going to deal with that. The sign is the cruciform, a mark subscribed instead of a name or a bill of complaint. Sounds like almost like slavery, how you're branded. It says, it's stated in Job 31:35. It stated it. And it says, in the East, some, even the bishops being unable to write, put the sign of the cross instead of their names, which is still often done by common people in legal proceedings. So if you didn't know how to write your name, you would just draw a cross. Then it says, this writing is not failed or being the case, so as for the expression to be received in the uses of language. Let's deal with this for a moment. The tall cross became justified, a figure of worship based off of verse 4. And Yahuwah said unto him, go through the midst of the city, through the midst of Jerusalem, and set a mark upon the what? forehead of the men that sigh and cry for the abominations to be done in the midst thereof. I want to deal with the word forehead for a moment. The word forehead is masca, which means to be conspicuous. It means basically to stand out. It means to be conspicuous. It means to stand out. Job 31, he says, oh, that one would hear me. Behold, my desire, the ta. That word desire is ta. So what Job is using it, just like they gave reference to, wasn't dealing with an actual cross, but it was actually dealing with a desire. So Job said that thou would hear me. Behold, my desire, or my ta, is the Almighty would answer me. So the ta was the fact that the Almighty would answer me, and that my adversaries had written a book, knowing that he got me. So the ta had to do with a desire and not necessarily a mark. Even though it means mark, the ta is a symbol. We're talking about a desire here. Let's see this in another transliteration. So we seen forehead meant conspicuous or set apart, where everybody would take notice of you. Like a lot of people don't want to be conspicuous. They want to be, you know, more under. They don't want nobody to notice what's going on. Conspicuous means I'm going to let everybody know. I'm going to be a fool for Mashiach. Okay, so let's see this in another transliteration. And Yahuwah said unto me, go through the midst of the city, through the midst of Jerusalem, and set a desire upon the conspicuous of the men that sigh and cry for all the abominations done in the midst thereof. So what's going on is basically the people that would have the desire to do what the Most High said would not be slain. Just like when he came down from the mount and said, who would worship with me? And Aaron took out his sword and he said, we will. He said, take out your sword and slay them. Because they had the same desire of Torah, they were not destroyed. What I want to pitch to you today is, if your desire is Torah, you're going to stand out in this generation. Mark 13:13 said, all men will hate you because of me, but he who endures till the end shall be saved. It also tells us in 2 Timothy 3, around verse 7, he says that anyone who wants to live a godly life in Mashiach will suffer persecution. I need you to understand, if you have a desire for Torah, you will be conspicuous. You will stand out. It even tells us that anyone who wants to be truth will become a prey. Listen, you make yourself a prey by wanting to do truth. You are conspicuous. You stand out. Now we're going to deal with Constantine, because the Maccabees actually brings us into the understanding of Alexander the Greek, who comes in later in Constantine. Let's deal with this. On the day of 312 AD, Constantine is said to have received the vision of the cross. Isn't it funny? Constantine got a vision, y'all. Constantine is the one that turned the Sabbath worship into Sunday worship. He's the one that told them if they wanted to eat kosher, that they would have to pay a tax to eat kosher. And they used the tax to build temples for other powers. It says, on the day while he was in front of his tent with his officers and the troops around him, he had a vision of an enormous cross of the fire in the heavens. Of what? A fire. Isn't it funny that the Klu Klux Klan, their image is a cross that is on fire? Hold on, y'all. Let's deal with this for a minute. Let's sit on that for a second. The Klu Klux Klan's image is a cross on fire. Constantine's vision was an enormous cross on fire. Y'all, I don't know if we keep going, but look, on the side of the cross were words in the Greek language. In the Greek language, by this conquer, the words are sometimes given a Latin form as hoc signo vinces, the transliteration of which is, by the sign thou shalt conquer. So basically what it said on this big fiery cross is, by this sign you shall conquer. So we're going to go ahead and make this the image for folk to worship, because Constantine says so. Constantine was astonished at the wonderful vision, and he gazed at it until it faded away. He could not understand what it meant and was greatly troubled. But that night he dreamed that Mashiach appeared to him in robes of dazzling white, bearing a cross in his hand. Isn't it funny that the Egyptians, all of their powers, all of their pharaohs had ankhs in their hands? And so did Mashiach in his vision, so he states, had an ankh in his hand, and promised Constantine victory over his enemies if he would make the cross his standard. Well, I don't know about you, but I'm telling you right now, for me, Yahuwah is my standard. I thought I read in the script, he said, when the enemy come in like the flood, Yahuwah shall what? Lift up a standard against them. And it sure can't be the same standard that Constantine used. So somebody needs to tell me, the word is his standard. I need some help, y'all. The word is his standard. I don't need no image. All I need is the word. The word is spirit. Come on, y'all. They that worship him must worship him in ruach, in truth. The word is ruach. Come on, y'all. The word manifested itself in flesh. Come on, y'all. The ruach, man. We ain't worshiping no image that they done created for us to worship. And sure enough, if it came from Constantine. Constantine now declares himself a what? Christian. Well, look at that. KKKs. They Christians. They got burning fiery crosses. Come on, y'all. I need some help, y'all. In white robes. There it is. Wow. With their crosses in their hand. Come on, y'all. To what? Hang the so-called Negro on trees. Cursed is every man that hangs from a tree. Y'all work with me for a moment. It says, with a banner attached to bearing the initials in the name of Mashiach. The banner was called the Liborium, and afterwards, the standard of the Roman Empire. The standard of the Roman emperors. So look, do you want your standard to be the same standard as the Roman emperors? That's the question I got when we're asking about we worshiping the cross or not, or if that's going to be our symbol. If your dad was killed by a hatchet, you wouldn't rock a hatchet around your neck. Wow. So why are you going to rock what you so-called say Mashiach was crucified on your neck? Maybe because you're trying to get me caught up in the Roman worship that worships the sun so I could turn my back from the temple? Come on, y'all. I need some help. As for me and my house, we going to serve Yahuwah. That's why we keep to his commandments. That's why what he said, what do? We talk. Come on, y'all. We have this desire for his commandments. And because we have this desire for his commandments, we have a ta, which is a desire on our forehead, which means we are conspicuous. We stand out because we keep the commandments of Elohim, according to Ezekiel 8:4. The cross in Matthew's 10:38 is transliterated from the word staff. So when it tells you to pick up your cross and follow him, he's actually saying, pick up your staff and follow him. What do you mean by staff? What a staff means to exercise your authority. He's saying, pick up your authority and walk after him. What did he tell Moshe? He said, use what is what? In your hands. What was in his hands? A staff. He wanted him to exercise his authority with what was in his hand. So the Most High is saying, you've got to exercise your authority. If you're going to come in him, exercise your authority. Don't walk around with a form of godliness and deny the power. Exercise your authority. He said that he given us the divine nature to escape the corruption that is in the world through lust. Exercise your authority. We can't sit around and be like the world, but say we represent him. 2 Timothy 2:19 says, nevertheless, Yah's solid foundation stands firm with this inscription sealed on it. Those who name the name of Mashiach must depart from iniquity. We cannot continue to live in iniquity. We cannot continue to live in flesh. We cannot continue to sin. We've got to exercise our authority. Let's go to Numbers chapter 17, 1 and 10. I want to show you about this staff that symbolizes the exercising of authority. Numbers chapter 17, 1 through 10. In Numbers 17, 1 through 10, it says, and Yahuwah spoke unto Moshe, saying, speak unto the children of Israel, and take every one of them a what? Rod, a staff, according to the house of their fathers, of all their princes, according to the house of their fathers, 12 rods, write thou every man's name upon his rod. I need you to understand something. The name was written upon the rod. Isn't it funny that in Psalm 23, he says, yea, though I walk through the valley of shadow of death, I fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy what? Thy rod. Come on. Your authority. Your staff, your authority comforts me. If I didn't think that the Most High had any kind of authority, if I didn't think the Most High had any kind of power, then I'd be afraid when I'm walking through the valley, y'all. But because I know he's got authority and he's got power, I'm not ashamed. Then he says in verse 3 in Numbers 17:3, and thou shalt write Aaron's name upon the rod of Levi, for one rod shall be for the head of the house and for the fathers. And thou shalt lay them upon the tabernacle of the congregation before the testimony where I meet with you. And it shall come to pass the man's rod whom I shall choose shall blossom and will make cease from the murmuring of the children of Israel, whereby I murmur against you. Now let's deal with this. He's going to take all of these different people and all of their authority and give one person authority over all their other authorities. Come on, y'all. And Moshe spoke unto the children of Israel, and every one of their prince gave them a rod, a piece of each prince, one according to their fathers in their house. Even the 12 rods and the rods of Aaron was among their rods. And Moshe laid upon the rods before Yahuwah in the tabernacle of the witness. And it came to pass on the morrow that Moshe went to the tabernacle of the witness, and behold, the rod of Aaron for the house of Levi was budded, and brought forth buds, bloom, blossoms, and yield almonds. And Moshe brought out of the rods and said, Yahuwah unto all the children of Israel, and looked into every man his rod. And Yahuwah said unto Moshe, bring Aaron's rod again before the testimony to keep as a token against the rebels. Let me tell you something. He had authority, y'all. Aaron had authority. Why did he have authority? Because he was the priest, y'all. Let me deal with it. He was the priest exercising in the authority. What happens is if we turn our back away from the temple and we begin to worship the Son and we do not do justice and we do not do his right rulings, then what we do is basically bring a high charge against ourselves, against the Most High. Then he says, and thou shalt quite take away their murmurings from me, that they die not. You need to know your stuff. The word stauros is cross, and it occurs 27 times in the New Testament in 27 verses. Matthew 10:38, pick up your staff. It says cross, pick up your staff and follow me. It's in Matthew 16:24. In Matthew 16:24, this is what he states. Then said Yahusha unto his disciple, if any man will come after me, let him deny himself and take up his staff and follow me. Let him take up his authority and follow me. You can't follow the Most High if you ain't got no authority. Hold on. What do you mean by this? Well, let's look at the 7 foolish sons of Sceva. They tried to follow the footsteps of everyone else, and they said, Shah we know, and Mashiach we know, but who are you? So I'm telling you, you got to have this authority when you're following them. And then we're dealing with Matthew 27 and 32. In Matthew 27 and 32, it states something. It says, and they came out and they found a man of Cyrene, Simon. By the name of him they compelled to bear his stauros, his stick. Listen, this was basically, the stauros was a pointed tree. It was a tree that had a pointed tip. And you're going to see it in Matthew 27 and 40, and you're going to see it in 27 and 42. Mark 8:34, same statement we were dealing with before. Mark 8:34, it's bringing out the fact right here. It says, and when he called the people unto him, his disciples again, he said, whomsoever come after me, let him deny himself and take up his staff or his authority and follow after me. We're dealing with the same thing, y'all. And then verse 15 and 21, same thing. It says, and where he's dealing with the stauros, he's dealing with Simon again. And he's starting to show you how he took on that. It's in Luke, it's in John, it's in Corinthians, it's in Galatians, it's in Ephesians, and last but least, it's in Colossians. Oh yeah, in Hebrews, I forgot, Hebrews 12 and 2. So we're dealing with all of that. and we're dealing with the fact of Staros. But what's funny is we got to remember we've already went through Constantine. We brought forth how, you know, it came from Egypt, how all of them would have their ankhs, you know, and they were the rulers. And then we went to Constantine, and he seen the cross on fire, the big massive cross on fire, had a vision with the white robe like the Klu Klux Klan, and he came in and told them that they would be the conquerors. Let's deal with this for a moment. In the third definition, it says it's an upright stake, especially a pointed one. It's not a cross like what we think of it is. It was a tree that had a pointed end. It says a well-known instrument of what? Most cruel and ignominious punishment borrowed by the what? Greeks and the Romans. From who? The Phoenicians. It says to it was affixed among the Romans down to the time of who? Look at that, y'all. Constantine the Great. Ain't it funny that in Romans chapter 1 and 7, we was talking about all those that are in Rome? Look, man, this is captivity, y'all. It says the guiltiest criminals, particularly the bastard slaves. Hold on, y'all. Isn't it funny that we was hanging from trees as slaves in America? Along with the KKK. Come on, y'all. That's what they did to us, man. Robbers, authors, and abettors of insurrections, if you raising up against the folk. And then it said occasionally, hold on, y'all. Then it says occasionally in the providence, the arbitraries, pleasures of the governors, upright, peaceable men also, and of Roman citizens themselves. The crucifixion which Christ underwent. The origin comes from Greek 2476. And this is what it says. A pole, y'all. Isn't it funny that just like Moshe put the serpent up on the pole, it said that later on that was going to be the same thing as Mashiach, because by his stripes we are healed. I need somebody to work with me. But somehow in the midst of that, we bought into Constantine's great lie that we are to worship this cross. Tammuz. That's the cross. That's the tall cross. That's the cross that they try to justify in Lent when they put that symbol on their head. Look, y'all, that's the Tammuz. I need you to work with me for a moment. If we was to take the Ta, which is not what the Most High was telling us to worship, y'all. The Ta, right? You take the Ta and you take the sun. And if you take the Ta and you take the sun, you end up with the Ankh. Isn't it funny that that looks like the crucifixion of Mashiach? They got us worshiping fertility of the sun. Eternal life comes from the sun. That's what they're trying to tell y'all. Thanks. Questions or comments? This is a reference to something that I had shared.